Dogman habituating forest ruins? Dear Scary Stories NYC. Not many people know that there is a lost city in Madison, Wisconsin, and even fewer people claim to have seen a dogman habituating in the woods containing the remains of this lost town. It's a very unpopular position to take, so I'm giving you this story anonymously. You'd better present it as for entertainment purposes only, so that you don't get in trouble with the school. You see, the entire place is in the forest where the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Arboretum is currently located. For some reason, they don't like people spreading rumors that monsters inhabit their campus. I have personally engaged in heated debates, one might even call them arguments, with staff who work for the college. They think I'd be damaging the school's business by going public with my story, but I was not harmed by the Dogman, and I have no proof that Dogman is an actual threat to human life. I mean, clearly it's a carnivore, and quite likely it's a hunter-scavenger, but we don't know that it hunts human beings, and my story, since I survived it, might be added to the pile of evidence that suggests that Dogman perhaps are not interested in humans as food. There seems to be a general consensus that werewolves would be bad for business, but that has not always been the case with ghosts and other strange phenomena. Why would the possible presence of living werewolves not be good business for the school, should it turn out to be the truth of the matter? Since my experience happened years back, and since I've not really been allowed back on campus too much since then, I really don't know if what I witnessed was a chance occurrence, or if it were actual proof of habitation by a non-human species. I'm going to just tell you my story as well as I can without revealing my identity, and you can decide for yourself if there might be something to it or not. For the sake of your channel, I would like to state openly at this point that the rest of this story is technically hearsay, not legally admissible in court. We do not present enough evidence to prove our case, and so this is merely being presented for the entertainment of the viewers, and not as any sort of accusation against any particular institution in Wisconsin. First of all, if we look at a map of the Arboretum Woods, we can see that, nestled next to Lake Wingra in the way it is, it looks like its own little Shangri-La. It feels like you're deep in the woods, but actually you're in the middle of a college campus in Madison, Wisconsin. That's the capital of the state. Over 250,000 people live in Madison. There's no reason to think that a dogman, or any sort of large cryptid really, should even be able to travel to the place, as he or she would need to travel through some densely populated areas. And yet, it was in that forest that I saw what I saw, both times. The first incident happened, I admit, when I was a bit tipsy and got somewhat lost while returning to my room after a party. I'm afraid when I started at the university I was a bit of an amateur drinker, and it was due to this shortcoming that I found myself lost in an attempted shortcut through the Arboretum Woods at night, when it suddenly started to rain. When you're under a heavy tree cover, you can hear the rain long before it becomes an issue down on ground level. Although my sense of direction was clearly blurred, my sense of hearing seemed to be elevated, and I woke up a bit, looking around to find cover before the rain eventually made its way down far enough to drench me. I saw a house and ran toward it while still making out details about its features. It looked to be abandoned and run down, but those were not unattractive features to me, as I was looking for temporary shelter on that night. If there were no current owner, there would be nobody to kick me out either. I assumed at the time that this must be part of the lost city that I had heard so much about, but I'm not so sure about that anymore, which I'll get back to in a minute. So I was coming up on the house, hearing the rain approaching from above, when another sound joined in on the mix. It was the sound of someone sweeping, like sweeping the floor, and it was coming from that house ahead. Maybe someone did live there after all, I thought, and I decided I'd better approach a bit more carefully. Standing in the front door frame, which no longer had any door in it, I called into the house, asking if anybody was home. I didn't hear the sweeping noise any longer, so I wondered if I might have startled the homeowner, or the squatter, or whomever else might be inside. I asked permission to come in out of the rain, and then I listened for a response. Not getting one, I took one step into the house, just far enough that the rain poured down outside, maybe an inch behind me. Enough cold, wet rain sprinkled on the back of my neck to give me the shivers, and I took a few more steps into the house, in spite of the fact that I had not been invited. Once I was further inside, my eyes adjusted to the light, and I could see a closed door on the wall opposite me. I wanted to get behind the closed door, as the wind and rain were blowing into the room and giving me a chill. I knocked on the door, but got no response, then announced that I was going to come inside. As soon as I opened the door, the wind took it and blew it out of my hand. It turned out that the back door of the house was missing too, just as the front door, and now the storm winds were beginning to whip up. The sudden noise of the door slamming violently open whipped something else up too. There was a hound lying on the rug who howled mournfully as the cold wind blew on his back, waking the big old thing up. I felt bad for the large creature, but not as bad as I was about to feel. The immense animal raised itself up from a prone sleeping position onto its front legs in a somewhat stiff way, and I wondered exactly how old that giant sleepy dog was. As it lumbered up into a seated position, though, it looked a little looser and more limber. In the seated position, the shaggy old canine was already as tall as I was, and we looked at each other, eye level to eye level. Something about me matching its gaze angered the beast, and I saw it rise. Not up to all fours as I had expected, though. In fact, I had already started turning to run, assuming the dog was about to rise to all fours and chase me. At the last moment, though, my eyes caught the big hound rising up to a standing position, standing on its hind legs like you or me. That nearly gave me whiplash, as my curiosity caused my neck to jerk backward to see if that dog really just went bipedal, while my body didn't care how many legs the dog ran on, just as long as we got away from it in time. This dog was in a lot of ways like one of those big Marmaduke dogs, but not in all ways. Like the arms and the legs were more muscular, and the ears were more feral looking and upright. It also seemed like it had ridiculously long claws on all four limbs, and fangs large enough to play a vampire in a movie. It was so tall that it was unable to stand all the way up in that room, and I wondered if it could even fit through the door to chase me outside. Now, even though these are a lot of thoughts to jot down, the thoughts themselves happened over the course of 1 or 2 seconds, and then I ran out of that house, back out into the rain, in the disorientingly dark woods. I could hear the dog wailing as though it were in pain, and I found the sound of that scared me so much that it was hard to run. I became uncoordinated and almost tripped over myself. I was shaking all over and genuinely had that bad feeling that I was not going to survive this situation. I really thought I had walked into a horror movie. Running through the forest, I no longer heard the Dogman chasing me, but I heard sweeping sounds, just as I had initially thought I heard coming from that apparently abandoned house in the woods. Whenever I heard the sweeping, I ran away from it, and soon I realized I was coming up on the back of where I was staying at the time. I never felt so happy to be sleeping on a small, uncomfortable bed with a smelly roommate before. The next day I told that smelly roommate the story I just told you, and he started telling me that the lost city was more lost than just abandoned houses. Mostly all that was left of it was some stairways in the woods and some sidewalks, things like that. He told me that the house I saw the Dogman in shouldn't even exist, as far as he knew. The two of us set out to find this abandoned house in the woods, He brought along his video camera and he wanted to record the house, whether there were any strange upright canids living in it or not. Well, we were unable to even find the place, which does not mean I imagined it. I was disoriented when I found it, and I couldn't remember too well how I had gotten out of there, so it shouldn't be that surprising that we were unable to locate the Dogman house during the daylight hours. My roommate decided I had hallucinated the entire episode, but unless someone put shrooms in the punch bowl at the party, I doubt very much that could have happened. Sometime after I became acclimated at the school, I started seeing this pretty undergraduate. One night, we wandered into the Arboretum woods, and our romantic moment together was ruined when we both heard what sounded like a very large wolf howling in those very woods. It sounded the same as what I had heard that other night. Not the sweeping sound, but the mournful wail of the upright canid beast. I told this girl that we'd better get the heck out of there, but she insisted that we had to head toward the sound and locate the source. I asked her why, and she said we needed to know where the animal was so that we could alert the university's security to its location. It didn't really make sense to me, but she was a pretty girl who would actually date a dork like me, so I really had no choice but to do what she suggested. We ran toward the sound of the howling, but instead of locating the Dogman, we came upon that same abandoned-looking house in the woods all over again. I turned to say something to my girlfriend, but I thought she had been walking with me, but apparently we parted company at some point when I wasn't looking. Staring at the house, I studied it and was certain that it was the exact same house as the last time. There was a couch or something out front that looked the same as the first time I saw it, so I was certain this was the identical location. Then, my eyes were attracted to the dancing light inside the one window I could see through from my vantage point. There was a candle or some sort of fire on the floor in the center of that room, and shadows were being cast upward onto the walls and ceiling as a figure moved around inside the room. I could see by the shadows that whatever was in there had long, pointed ears located up on top of its head. It was not a human, but it walked upright. I tried to follow the same route home I had taken the first time I had seen the abandoned house in the woods, but only found myself getting increasingly more lost. When I wandered out of the woods, I was on the opposite side of campus from where I had thought I would be. I called my girlfriend from a payphone, but her roommate told me that she was still out. She and I didn't speak again until the following morning, where she told me a different story than the one I remembered living through. According to her, when she suggested we follow the creature, I ran away before she knew what was happening. There was the Dogman, most likely the same one that I had seen both times. She said it was gray, and it stood on its hind legs, taller than any man she'd ever seen. According to this girl, the creature had human-like hands and almost humanoid legs, that it kept reaching out for her, very nearly grabbing her over and over, yet always letting her just barely get away. It seemed to want to frighten her, more than it wanted to genuinely hurt her, but it was very good at scaring her. When she finally found her way back to campus, she was exhausted and an emotional wreck. This guy that I personally hated found her and helped her home. I found out later that he also asked her out. She couldn't very well say no to her knight in shining armor, and so that was how I stopped dating her, and he took over instead. And the reason she dumped me, that I ran away from her in fear, that never even happened. Someone or something was playing with both of our minds that night. I saw the Dogman inside that cabin. The girl, on the other hand, was chased through the forest by that same Dogman during that same stretch of time. And even though it all seems like some sort of bad dream, it had real-life consequences in that I lost my girlfriend to this total creep of a guy who should never have had a chance with her in the first place. It was after this happened that I began to speak out more openly about the dogman or werewolf on campus, and things for me personally went from bad to worse. I was never formally, technically kicked out of school, but I found it impossible to stay somehow. The werewolf had destroyed my romance, and then he destroyed my career at the university, in spite of the fact that I never actually saw him ever again. Now I want to point out the dreamlike nature of these situations. They sound like narrations of a nightmare, and so possibly there might be a reason for that. What if these are not normal circumstances? What if there is some element to these incidents which remains unmeasurable by science, at least in its current form? What if these are interactions between different realities? What if the dogman is just as real as you or me, but the reality it comes from is only imaginary in our universe? Or possibly I should call it a hypothetical reality, an idea being proposed, but not fully fleshed out yet. Its interactions with us would seem just as real as interactions with a bear or a gorilla while they were occurring, yet still might be imaginary or hypothetical in the grand scheme of things. How many monsters were sighted in the 20th century, then searched for by a large crowd of angry villagers in the woods the next day? A lot of them. And yet how many monsters were caught? None of them. 0. So were they really there in the first place? Some might argue both yes and no at the same time. In some old 20th century books by authors like John Keel and Jacques Vallée, you can find arguments for this kind of interpretation of strange events. Not only are these things not alien, but they were here before humanity was. They were always here, and yet in a sense, they were never here at all. They'll appear as whatever they need to appear as in different times, depending on or mixing with your beliefs. If you believe in fairies or trolls, that's likely what you'll see. If you believe in aliens and Bigfoot, though, then expect to come out of the experience with different takeaways. This is why, when people ask me if the dogman is a shapeshifter like a werewolf, I have to say I think that the appearance of shape with these entities is a complicated subject to discuss, while we're still using language which was designed to describe ordinary reality. Can a dogman appear to change into a man or vice versa? Well, yes, but these things aren't just limited to 2 different appearances. I think they can appear to be ghosts, aliens, puckwudgies, Bigfoot, Thunderbirds, Dogman, or anything else they might be able to confuse you with. So, ultimately, no, I don't think these things are real, but if one of them is running at you with its claws out, you better get out of the way before you get sliced up. One of the few members of the faculty back then who wasn't entirely against everything I said told me, you don't have to resort to magic and hocus pocus. You could just look into the possibility of the creatures traveling underground. He asked me what cavern systems are known of in the area. Are there any man-made tunnel systems? If it was built over a city, are there tunnels under there still extant? He told me that was the direction I should be looking in if I wanted to prove the occasional presence of strange large cryptids. The idea of multiple dimensions seemed off the wall to him, but he was not a physics professor. I have to admit I have tried to find out about what lurks in the ground underneath the Arboretum. I have not had any success or learned any important information, as I've been blocked at every attempt to do so, mysteriously, by unseen hands. Does that mean there's something to this theory? Why does it feel as though someone might be preventing me from learning what's underground there, beneath that Arboretum? I find over a time that I've had to move on with my life. The chances of me ever finding out anything more on this subject grow thinner by the month. So, I went looking for hard evidence of cryptid inhabitation, but I came out with a new appreciation for the esoteric after I investigated the possibility of Dogman habituating Forest Ruins. Our executive producer today is Josh Bobbin. He's more dynamic than Batman and Robin. He'd best Goliath the Great in a wash. His last name is Bobbin. His first name is Josh. Please join us in thanking today's executive producer, Josh Bobbin, for making this episode possible. Josh gets to see our weekly secret uncensored stories, and so can you. Just join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com, or else do what Josh Bobbin did and click that join link under this or any of our videos. And now, here's International TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman with the rest of the deets. Hank? Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com, and that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal subscribers club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.